for joining us for Eva's Echo's Creative Career Series. Today I'm here with Carly Zimerman, who is an independent music artist. Thank you so much for joining us today, Carly.
Thank you for having me, Rena.
So we'll just start off, dive straight in. Can you tell us a little bit about your career so far?
Sure. My career right now is in a bit of an interesting kind of development phase. It's very exciting and very strange, and I'm not really sure where it's going to go. But that's because leading up to this point has been kind of an interesting journey. And I hope actually that it's instructive for people who might be in the same boat, because I think my story as a creative is a bit different from a lot that I've heard, or at least a lot that are kind of put out there as what I call the mythology of artistry. Like there's this kind of mythology that there's a very linear path, and it's it's just never been my experience. So basically I got a music degree. I went to college for music with a concentration in voice because I always liked music, but when I got out of music school, I felt really alienated from my own music making and from the music kind of community in general. So, and that's just because I went to a school that was almost a conservatory-like environment. It wasn't technically a conservatory, but it was classical curriculum, very rules focused. I went in, admittedly, not having any idea that music schools could be different, right? So I was the first person in my family to go to college. So I had no clue that, if you picked one over the, like, I didn't know you could go to Berkeley, for instance, which is this really famous music college in the States, and you could major in like distorted jazz F chords on a guitar, like it just crazy stuff. But where I was very kind of old-fashioned and classical based. If you were a vocal major like me, it was very much focused on opera, which I just wasn't into. I wasn't listening to opera. I was listening to contemporary stuff. And so because of this kind of rule structure as well, it felt like I couldn't be myself and I couldn't experiment and I couldn't really do any of the music that I wanted to be doing. So when I got out, I said, I quit. I hate music. I don't want to do it anymore. Yeah, I mean, I was just, I was like, if this is what music is, because in my brain, right, if you do music, if you like music, then you go to music school and then you're a musician. I couldn't see a path after music school. It was like, well, I'm not going to be an opera singer, and I'm not going to do classical music. So there's nothing for me, essentially.
And you don't know what you don't know. That was all an experience, totally normal.
100%. You don't know what you don't know, and you can't be what you can't see. Like. So I had no clue what to do, and I felt like, okay, well, it's not for me. So for quite a few years, I was just working and, in the service industry in New Orleans, and which I loved the city, and like there's a ton of music there, and that was great. But I was so lost. And then there were a few things that happened which were great, that kind of changed my focus a little bit and got me more connected to myself. So one of those is that I started traveling a bit, which I'm so glad that I got the chance to do, because that was something I was always going to do. I knew I had to. And I had this great trip to Cuba where I met this woman who was amazing. She was Australian, and she had, like 2 years before, recently sold all of her belongings in her house and quit her job, and she was just traveling around the world for a couple of years. We really hit it off, and so she visited me in New Orleans after, and she said, I don't know why, but I feel like I have to tell you to read The Artist's Way. So it's this book about creativity. It's this workbook. If people don't know it, it's basically you spend 3 months exploring, what your basic beliefs are about creativity and why you can or can't do what you want to do creatively. It's hugely powerful. It was for me, at least. But it was really interesting because, for whatever reason, she she even said to me, you know, I hated the book, but I really feel like you should read it. I feel like I should tell you that. So so I did, and that was part of a turning point. Another turning point was randomly meeting Hosier at a bar in New Orleans, and getting to have, it was amazing.
Whoa.
Totally random. And we talked about music, and it was like, I just felt this really powerful kinship with him. Like, I don't really know how to describe it, because it was a weird, totally powerful experience. But it was almost like, okay, well, I feel this kinship with this person who is doing like this huge thing musically, and not necessarily the fame thing, but just he's leaned in to this thing that he wants to do, you know, being a musician and going for it. And you know, when I met him, I think his song was like #1 at the time or something on the chart. So like, and what was crazy is nobody, this was in a bar in New Orleans, nobody else recognized him. Like we were able to have this beautiful conversation. And so I was like, oh, like if he can do that, then maybe I can, like, we're both human. I don't know. There was this really basic level realization. Okay, yeah, I can maybe do that as well. So there were things like that happened in my life. And it started me thinking on, okay, there's another way, right, to be a musician. I don't know what that is, but all I know is I have to do it for whatever reason. I feel that I have to go forward like that. So, you know, I've been working this whole time. All this time, I'm in the process of moving here to Ireland from the States, working, you know, a job in arts management, but trying to figure out how to do music on the side. So I had this great break, essentially, where I had applied for my visa to come here, or my employment permission to come here. And it took a long time to process. It took 4 months, which meant that I had to be in the States essentially without a job for 4 months, which was amazing because I wrote my whole album in 4 months. Like I moved in with my mom and I just wrote and practiced music and read about music and watched music documentaries and really focused in for 4 months. So I wrote an album in that time. And then once I got here, bless you, Rena, I met a producer, who's still my producer now, and he agreed to work on my album with me. And I knew nothing at that stage, absolutely nothing, but I was determined to do it. And I was really scared and I was really insecure about it. I had no idea if I was on the right track or not, because all I knew was these really strict classical music rules, you know, which didn't apply to what I was doing. So, you know, it was painful. It took a lot to do that. And the album itself took about 2.5 years to do. It was released the day before lockdown, and which was fine. Like I wasn't even planning on, you know, performing it or anything. I was just like, the important thing is that I've done it, and it's out of my head, it's in the world, and I can kind of call myself an artist now. And since then, there have been opportunities that I'm so grateful for. So I put out another single after that. I'm working on new music now, but I got commissioned, you know, by a festival of independent theaters, by a director who was doing a show to write a song for them, and you know, been able to meet these different people and really see myself now as an artist and see what might be possible for me in the future. So I'm on this interesting track right now, right, where I'm still working in arts management, but I have my music career, which I can see developing, and I'm excited to see where that goes in the future, because eventually I do want it to be my primary thing. And I'm doing, you know, this pop music as well, but I'm also a composer. So I was actually talking earlier today with Teho Tirdo, who's a composer who works with Inda Walsh a lot and does the music for like Medicine, which is a show that Galway International Arts Festival is putting on, and Grief is a Thing with Feathers and all that kind of thing. He writes the music for all that.
Oh, the music in Grief is fabulous. Fabulous.
It kills me. It kills me. Yeah. So I was telling him earlier today, like, I don't know how, we were talking about kind of navigating sound, and I was like, yeah, I don't know how this track and this track meet in my life, but I can totally see it. I love this experimental compositional weird stuff, and I learned to write music in music school, which is something I'm so happy that I got out of it. You know, if something good came out of it, that was it. You know, I now know how to write music and I have a foundation in music theory. But then there's this pop thing that's also kind of weird and experimental and dark and strange. And eventually they're going to meet. And I think that's actually why Tejo's music really resonates with me, because it's like strange and experimental and it's moving and gorgeous. So for me, it's like, oh, if I could score plays and work with more theater and visual arts, you know, that would, I think, be something really cool, but who knows?
And I could definitely see that based on, like, I don't know what the music is you're working on at the moment, but the first album, it had a lot of very theatrical elements. You know, it was atmospheric at times rather than the typical linear journey of a song when you're talking about the linear journey of the career, you know. It definitely had, like, you could see there was technique and practice and like there was method behind it, but it didn't always follow what you expected. Which was quite interesting.
I think that's because of my experience, you know, and so I just want to impress that upon, there's so many people I think who want to be doing art in some kind of way, and you know, they've convinced themselves that they can't, and yeah, it's difficult, you know, but yeah, it's like the experience of your life, whatever it is, feeding into your art and making that art unique. And that was another thing that I was talking with Tejo about today was, you know, he didn't go to formal music school. He was like, I couldn't get in. So I just started making the music I needed to make. And I was just like, yeah, you know, my experience actually with music school is mirrored in so many people I talk to. That's not necessarily the way to go about being an artist, is going to art school necessarily. I read a book once called Art and Fear, which is a great book, that says music school, or it says art school teaches you how to make art. It doesn't teach you how to make your art. And I just think that's really profound, and your experience feeds into your art more than you know. So if you've had other experiences other than this very linear thing, that's nothing but a benefit.
Exactly. And that relates so much to all different types of art as well. Yes. Like the same with drama school. If you go and you stick 50 actors in a room and they all learn the Chekhov technique or the Adler technique, the Adler is not going to be right for every actor. Some of them will want to do Chekhov, you know, or Hagen, you know, there's a different fit for everyone. Or I know myself, I meld some techniques together to create what works for me. And I think that's what a lot of people end up doing, is leaving art school and taking the bits that worked for them and maybe throwing the other bits away.
And with acting as well, I have to imagine embodying other people. Like you have to have the experience of being being a person, obviously, but like, I don't know, maybe living in some way apart from drama school. Like you can't really, in some ways, I don't know if you can be taught the thing that you really need, like that connecting with that humanity piece that makes it powerful. If that makes any sense.
Completely agree.
Yeah, and by the way, you know, again, something else that Tejo mentioned, everything he said was like gold. I love him. But he was saying, you know, we need the people who are going to keep alive that beautiful classical music, the people who have PhDs in this. We need them, because this music is so beautiful and so powerful. But you and I are not those people. You know, like, you know, there are people who take this linear path and through drama school, and that's as 100% legitimate as somebody who circles around the long way and comes back to art in some other form. It's all part of this beautiful experience and this whole, when it comes to the art context.
Yeah, that's a really lovely way of putting it. The paths kind of leading to the same path, but taking different journeys there. I'll lead on to our second question then. What is it that you love the most about your job, about creating?
Yeah. So James Baldwin is my favorite author of all time. And he, in his book, The Fire Next Time, talks about people being able to renew themselves at the fountain of their own lives. And he basically he talks a lot about racism in America in particular, but the way that he goes into uh, like why it's happening like psychologically and culturally is really fascinating. And he talks about, when you can't connect with yourself, when you don't have a touchstone for yourself and you can't renew yourself at the fountain of your own life, then you have problems like this. People will grasp at anything, and they'll be kind of flailing, and if you can't connect with yourself, it's you don't know what you're doing. And for me, music is the way that I can renew myself at the fountain of my own life. When there's a lot of things in my life that maybe I enjoy doing, or maybe I don't, or maybe I just have to do them, but music is the only thing that is that thing that we don't yet have language for, right? At least in the English language, I don't know. There aren't any words. I can't describe what that thing is. But, I think about those years when I wasn't doing music and I didn't know who I was a lot because I was 23, getting older is a great idea. If you can do it, it's amazing. But there's also this piece where I was just so lost because the thing that I want to do, again, another James Baldwin quote, the way my blood beats is how he puts it. He says, if you don't go the way your blood beats, you won't be living somebody else's life. You won't be living any kind of life at all. And so for me, it was like I wasn't going the way that I knew I had to go. I wasn't following the way that my blood beats. So I couldn't connect with myself, and that just, it felt so meaningless. And I can't help but think of a lot of people who feel meaninglessness in their lives because it's easy to do in a kind of society like ours. It's moving so fast, and we have so many options now, and everything seems really messed up, and we don't know who we are anymore. In a way, it's so easy to feel that disconnect. So I'm just grateful that through my work I can connect with that. It's not like this instantaneous miracle potion, like I don't just sit down to write and everything is great in the world. That's not how it works. For me, actually, at this stage in my career, it's still quite painful. I have a lot to work through, I think, but there's something necessary in that. Even if my mother is the only person who ever listens to my music for the rest of my life, or if I do this and everybody in the world hates it, I still have to do it. I realize that now. My life without it and my life with it is a very different thing. So I'm just so grateful that music does allow me to renew myself, if that makes sense.
Perfect sense. That's such a beautiful sentiment. I really love that. Rejuvenating yourself through what you love. It made me think of it sounds silly and how profound all that you're talking about is, but have you seen the Pixar movie Soul?
No.
Oh, you would really like it. It's the main character, he's a jazz musician, and it's all about the things that make up your soul and jazz's relation to that for him. It's quite a fun little movie. But just how these are the things that make us unique or special, and yeah, it's very sweet. Not enough about Pixar.
I like it. I love it. That's great.
It's really, really lovely. I really like Pixar.
Yeah.
But, do you have any advice for emerging artists aspiring to do what you do?
Definitely. So I tell this story actually whenever I'm asked this question by somebody. When I was living in New Orleans, I had a friend, my friend Sarah came to visit me, and we went to a restaurant, and we sat at this table, and there was a centerpiece in the middle of the table that was shaped like a street lamp, like in the French Quarter in New Orleans. It's this old historic quarter, and they had these beautiful curved street lamps. They look, very old timey or whatever. So the centerpiece was a street lamp, and at some point in the meal, my friend, the waiter, comes over to the table, and my friend looks at this, points to the centerpiece and says, "Can I have this?" And the waiter says, "Okay." And she took it. I actually have it somewhere because it reminds me of that story. But I just remember being like, wait. You can ask for what you want, even if it's totally random, and you might actually get it. Like a centerpiece that doesn't make any sense. But actually, if you think about it, they probably had a whole box of those centerpieces in the back somewhere.
Yeah.
They don't care, but that experience, I just totally changed the way that I interact a lot of times. It's informed a lot of my decisions going forward, because I just realized in it's proven true again and again in my life. You can ask directly for what you want. Doesn't always work, but honestly, it works way more times than you would think. There's actually this great TED Talk I watched the other day about this guy who made it his personal challenge to go through 100 days of rejection. So he would go up and ask people for something really crazy that they probably weren't going to grant him. And he said, actually, the first time that I went up to somebody, the challenge was to ask a stranger to borrow $100. And so the first time he did it, he went up and he was really nervous and afraid of getting rejected. The whole point of this exercise was to get him so used to rejection that it didn't really matter to him anymore. So, the stranger was like, "No." And so he said, "Okay." And he ran away. And he said, actually, throughout the challenge, what I realized is if I actually stay in that moment of asking and that curiosity and that rejection with that person, what actually happens is, first of all, a lot of times the answer changes, because you can connect with somebody. Like, if I would have stayed and said, "Well, why not?" Or I don't know, like just started a conversation with somebody and connected with them on a human level. I mean, who knows if he would have, given him $100, but he actually said it worked subsequently on other challenges. Like he went into a Starbucks and asked if he could be a greeter at the door for an hour. And after talking to the manager's like, "You know what? Fine. Yeah, do it." He went into a university and asked if he could teach a class. And after going door to door from the professors for like 3 or 4 classrooms, he finally got to a professor that let him teach his class. Like crazy things like this but this happens, right? The reason that I'm here in Ireland is because when I was interning here, there wasn't a job in the organization that I'm working in now, but I knew that I wanted to stay here and work here. So I created the job that I wanted. I wrote it out, and then I asked for it, and they said yes. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yes.
So, and now I have all these opportunities, like musically and everything, and I can connect all of those dots from just asking. It's just such a huge and simple thing, and there is an art to it, like that staying in the rejection, if that happens, learning from that, but also trying it. You don't have to have the confidence straight off to do it. A lot of people think like you have to build up maybe the confidence before you do that kind of thing, but that's not how it works. You actually build up courage and confidence by doing those things.
Exactly. And
so
practice as well.
Totally. So I would encourage people just to maybe start small on something unrelated that doesn't really matter to you. Like again, this guy in the TED Talk went to a restaurant and asked for a burger refill, which is hilarious. And like, but maybe something not quite as absurd, but asking maybe for something small, seeing, like getting used to that feeling. How does it feel? It's really terrifying. okay, did I learn something? What happened? I would really just encourage people to go for what you want and ask for it, because you might get it.
That's such brilliant advice, because I feel a lot of kind of up and coming actors in my classes, or other theater makers that I'm talking to that say they want to set up their own theater company, a lot of them don't go for it because they're just so afraid of the failure.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time you are going to get those no's at the beginning, but you kind of have to get those no's. Like, I always say, your first show isn't going to be Shakespeare. So don't rehearse until it's Shakespeare. You have to have a few different ones first,
Totally. There's the band Villagers.
Yes,
They
yes.
have an amazing song called Courage, one of my favorite songs of all time. And one of the lines is, courage is the sweet relief of knowing nothing comes for free. And this idea that there's something so sweet at the end of it, when you get rejected and you're working and you're just, nobody's listening, and you're working and you're going along, kind of the way the world works is, if you don't quit and you keep developing and doing the work and getting the work out there, things do happen. Opportunities do come up from that. But the example of starting your own theater company, okay, what are the small steps you can take from that? Like for me, if I were trying to start one, I would email you, Rena, and I would say, can you give me an hour of your time? That's actually how I got to talk to Tejo. Like, I never dreamed I would be able to talk to Tejo. He's this incredible, famous composer. And we had a conversation today that was lovely. And I got to send him my music too. I was like over the moon. But this is the point, is I would email
asked.
And you, I would imagine you would totally.
Oh yes, and people have done that in the past, and I've always said, yes, I'll meet you for a coffee. Like it's happened. So our email box is open, and myself and Hazel have done that many times. Our whole ethos is to support emerging artists, so anytime we can meet anyone and help them out, we do.
Exactly. And there are just, like, you'd be so surprised, at the amount of people who just say yes. So this is just a great place to start. Emailing people, asking, can we meet? Or, can we have a 10-minute phone conversation, or Zoom now? I mean, talk about the opportunity that has opened up with Zoom. Even though we had Skype before, I don't know that we really had this consciousness of like, oh yeah, we can just hop on a Zoom call from around the world.
Attainable, or we weren't just familiar with it. It didn't seem easy, even though I suppose it was.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I think who knows? I think Zoom is probably fairly embedded now for those situations when you can't meet in person. I think, especially right now, it's completely acceptable to email anyone in the world that you want to talk to and just ask for a Zoom meeting, So anyway, I would just say for people, if you want to start somewhere, start there and just gather information and see what you can do with it.
Brilliant, Carly. Thank you so much. I think that is fantastic advice. And thank you so much for sharing everything with us today. And Absolutely. I'll be leaving all of your links. Carly is on Spotify, Instagram, Facebook, everything. And I'll be leaving all of those links down below. Yeah. And a little snippet of the song to play us out.
Yay!
Do you think royal blood means you're a king? Do you think feeling in control means the end of suffering? Do you think holding gold means you're glittering? Let us suppose that no, it don't mean anything. Well, here we are with a question, a plea. What is the